Southern Fried True Crime covers cases that are not suitable for young listeners, and there may also be some explicit language used. Listener discretion is advised. In 1927, the city of Chattanooga, Tennessee, was thriving off the back of the early 20th century industrial boom. The hospitality sector in particular was enjoying a renaissance, largely due to the relaunch of a well-known local establishment called the Reed House a year earlier, following extensive renovations. The Chattanooga institution, which played a seminal role in the city's development and identity, was a popular destination for both city residents and tourists alike. At the time, extended hotel stays for out-of-towners like Annalisa Netherly weren't unusual. After arriving in Chattanooga from San Francisco, the young woman checked into room 311 of the Reed House. One morning during Annalisa's stay, housekeeping staff received a gruesome shock. Lying in the bathtub of the 3-bedroom suite was Annalisa's lifeless body, her head almost severed, and her corpse largely submerged beneath the bloody water. How could a young woman so far from home have come to such a brutal end? Welcome to episode 192, Annalisa Netherly and the History of the Reed House. Nestled in the southeast of Tennessee, at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, and alongside the Tennessee River, the city of Chattanooga lies just north of the border with the state of Georgia. Immortalized in the Glenn Miller version of the 1941 jazz standard Chattanooga Choo Choo, the city came into its own in the mid-19th century with the arrival of the railroad. According to author Alan Brown in his book, Haunted Tennessee, Ghosts and Strange Phenomena of the Volunteer State, local businessman Thomas Crutchfield Sr. promised officials from the state of Georgia, which owned the Western and Atlantic Railroad, that if Chattanooga was placed on the route, he would construct a hotel to accommodate passengers. Thomas Sr. secured the perfect spot in the downtown area on what was then 9th Street, straight across from Union Station. He later became mayor of Chattanooga. In 1847, Crutchfield House opened, with the 3-story hotel eagerly awaiting its first guests, arriving by rail from Atlanta in May of 1850. When Thomas Sr. died that same year, the running of the hotel was passed to his son, Thomas Jr. As the local economy boomed over the next decade, Crutchfield House prospered as one of Chattanooga's biggest, finest, and first hotels. It became a buzzing social hub where both locals and guests met to discuss pressing matters like politics, business, and development deals. But in the background, political instability was rumbling, with the American Civil War looming on the horizon. Tensions rose in Chattanooga on January 21st, 1861, when former Senator Jefferson Davis was on his way back to Mississippi after tendering his resignation to the U.S. Senate. During a stopover at the Crutchfield House, Davis gave an impromptu speech in the lobby, urging the importance of Tennessee seceding from the Union and joining the Confederacy. Thomas Jr.'s younger brother William, who was a staunch Union supporter, loudly denounced Davis as a renegade and traitor. The heated argument escalated, almost culminating in a duel, as the click of cocked pistols could be heard. Just in time, Thomas Jr. spirited his brother out of the room, narrowly avoiding violence. Seeing the writing on the wall, Thomas Jr. made the decision to sell Crutchfield House. He continued to enjoy financial success after the war, opening a general merchandise store on Market Street. Chattanooga itself played a pivotal role in the Civil War as a Confederate rail hub for transporting soldiers, essential supplies, and raw materials, with Crutchfield House designated as local Confederate headquarters. But early in September 1863, after Union soldiers occupied the city, the hotel was converted to a military hospital for wounded Union soldiers during the Battle of Chickamauga. In one day alone, on the last of the brutal and bloody conflict, around 500 men were taken in for treatment. Almost 4,000 Union and Confederate soldiers died at Chickamauga. Including those who died, both armies combined had losses of 34,000. Sadly, many men lost their lives at Crutchfield House during the war, succumbing to their injuries sustained in battle. Their bodies were stored in the basement, which served as a temporary morgue. But the spirits of some never left, leaving an eerie paranormal imprint on the grounds which pervades to this day. It wasn't just soldiers who died at the makeshift hospital during this time. According to one account, a Union soldier got into an argument with a sex worker in his room over payment and ended up killing the woman. Even after 160 years, her ghost is still said to haunt the historic building. Just 3 years after the war had ended, the Tennessee River flooded Chattanooga in March of 1867, the largest flood in recorded city history. After a 4-day storm, the river rose 57 feet, inflicting severe structural damage to many of the city's buildings. Streets were at least 4 feet underwater, and the lobby of the Crutchfield House was flooded. This flood was the catalyst for the city raising street level by 1 story to minimize the impact of future flooding. The hotel's fortunes continued looking bleak when it was destroyed by fire just 6 months later, after a blaze broke out in the oil room. Could it be that the lost and lonely spirits of the soldiers who had died on the site during the Civil War had somehow cursed the building? If they had, it did not deter Surgeon John T. Reed and his wife Caroline from buying the former hotel in 1871, which was now an office building on the corner of Broad and 9th Streets. Reed envisioned turning the premises back into Chattanooga's grandest hotel, dedicated to providing the finest in Southern hospitality. The Reeds had a hotel in their hometown of McMinnville, Tennessee, which burned down before they moved to Chattanooga in 1871. On New Year's Day, 1872, the new 45-room hotel was ready and now renamed the Reed House. 7 years later, in 1879, John sold the business to his 19-year-old son, Samuel Robertson Reed. During this period, the hotel was again temporarily used as a hospital, this time treating those afflicted by the 1873 cholera outbreak, which killed 102 people, followed by the 1878 yellow fever epidemic, which claimed 140 lives. From the late 19th century onwards, more improvements were made, including electric lighting, a 4th story, telephones in every room, a billiards room, Turkish baths, a rail ticket office, expansion to 250 guest rooms, and a dedicated retail space on the ground floor. But despite all the upgrades and progress, accidents at the hotel continued to claim lives. In 1916, 30-year-old traveling Nashville salesman Lane McQuitty was sitting writing a letter to his mother, died after a hydraulic pressure tank burst, ripping through the hotel walls in a massive explosion. In a separate incident, another man died after falling down an elevator shaft. Despite these tragic accidents, like his father, Samuel Reed was a constant innovator and had bigger dreams for the Reed House. In 1925, much of the existing hotel was demolished, apart from 120 rooms, in preparation for Samuel's ambitious revitalization plan. The following year, construction was complete on the 10-story, 400-room Georgian Revival-style building, costing a whopping $2.5 million, or just over $43 million today. On July 5, 1926, the fully renovated Reed House was officially launched, appointed with all the latest modern facilities combined with luxury. The lobby instantly conveyed a feeling of grandeur. Its soaring arches and magnificent columns beneath vaulted ceilings with bronze light fixtures, 2 large chandeliers, marbled terrazzo floors, richly upholstered furniture, and exquisitely carved Russian walnut paneling exuded opulence. The newest wing consisted of 280 rooms decked out with walnut furniture. Amenities available included a drugstore, florist, travel bureau, barbershop, coffee shop, writing room, beauty shop, tea room, and 2 private dining rooms. 25-foot ceilings were a feature of the elaborate silver ballroom, along with Waterford crystal chandeliers, Silver leaf ornamental cornices, solid silver sconces, and an oak floor, while the 220-seat public dining room delighted patrons with crystal light fixtures, gold damask drapes, and soft blue china. The large-scale improvements were even featured in an impressive 18-page spread of the July 1926 edition of the Hotel Monthly magazine, including full-page photos and floor plans. But even after the hotel's spectacular facelift, the restless spirits of those who spent their last days on the premises continued to make themselves known. Civil War soldiers who died in the former military hospital began appearing in the mirrors of the Silver Ballroom when no one else was around, as well as roaming the fourth floor. The presence of a very young spirit, perhaps a child, had also been reported on the second floor. Not every guest who checked into the revamped Reed House would check out. When Annalisa Netherly arrived in 1927 from San Francisco for an extended stay, no one could have guessed what would happen. Unfortunately, not much is known about Annalisa. Reports vary as to whether she arrived in Chattanooga with her husband or on her own. Nevertheless, she checked into room 311 on unknown business. There are several accounts of how Annalisa met a sorry and gruesome end. The most oft-repeated version has it that when her husband returned to their room one day following a meeting, he found her with another man. Enraged with jealousy, he slit Annalisa's throat with a razor in the bathtub where she was bathing, almost decapitating her. This is where her body was later discovered, her head hanging over the side of the tub. A different version claims Annalisa was a sex worker who was killed by a client she checked into the hotel with after he found she was entertaining other men. Other stories say Annalisa took her own life after a man she had taken a fancy to took up with another woman, or simply that her husband abandoned her for someone else. Overwhelmed with heartbreak following the rejection, she died by suicide. I have no idea how it would be possible to die by almost cutting your own head off, but the details in this instance are lost to history. To add to the mystery, there's nothing from this time formally documenting Annalisa's death. If indeed her manner of death was a homicide, it's not even clear whether her murderer was brought to justice. Following Annalisa's death, guests staying in room 311 began reporting all manner of unexplained occurrences. Unusual noises, objects moving, flickering lights, a heavy and despondent presence, a feeling of being watched, touched while in bed, and sudden running water are common, as are shadowy figures in the room. Guests often experience someone knocking on the door, but no one in sight when the door is opened. On one occasion, the phone in room 311 repeatedly rang for a male guest staying there, but every time he picked up, no one was on the line. According to author Alan Brown, in August of 2007, a couple staying in the room each had chilling experiences. Around 3:30 a.m. one morning, the woman awoke to the sound of something like a marble rolling across the bathroom floor, before the open bathroom door closed on its own. The following night, her husband had just come to bed after finishing some work on his laptop around 3 a.m. Just as he was drifting off to sleep, he saw the shadow of someone next to the bed, followed by the sense that the shadow was pressing its face close to the man's own. The shadow suddenly disappeared before moving to the dresser, waking the man's wife. To this day, Annalisa's restless spirit is believed to haunt not just room 311, but other parts of the hotel, especially the third floor. She has also said to have been spotted inside the mezzanine-level restroom. Annalisa takes an intense dislike to male guests, especially those who smoke, with many men at the hotel reporting their cigarettes and cigars being extinguished by an unknown force. According to author Susan Sawyer in her book Myths and Mysteries of Tennessee, one hotel employee of 30 years had always dismissed the stories about Annalisa until one day he saw a confused-looking woman in a nightgown at the open door to room 311. When the employee returned with another staff member to help the woman, she was gone. The door was now shut and locked from the inside and could not be unlocked for love or money. Not everyone who stays in room 311 reports unexplained events or paranormal activity, but others have found their experience so frightening, it's not uncommon for terrified guests to present at the front desk in the middle of the night requesting a new room. As recently as Halloween 2020, a woman staying in room 311 with her husband sought assistance just before midnight. She had found him lying on the floor, shaking and cursing people in a deep, uncharacteristic voice. Staff described the man's behavior as something like a possession. Despite its grisly, morbid history, the Reed House was still the place to see and be seen, even if you were an infamous mobster. In 1931, the hotel played host to Al Capone as he awaited trial in Chicago on federal tax evasion charges. The notorious mob boss stayed under police guard in room 311, where Annalisa Netherly died just 4 years earlier, and which the hotel was having trouble renting out for obvious reasons. But now, custom iron bars were installed on the windows to prevent Capone from escaping. For the record, he didn't report any unusual happenings in his room. Following Samuel Reed's death 11 years after Al Capone stayed there in 1942, the hotel changed hands multiple times. And as the face of travel started changing in the 1960s, with motor inns taking off across the country, the Reed House expanded its accommodations in 1962. This cost $1.6 million, or $16.5 million today. A 106-room, 6-story motel was added in a rear wing, complete with outdoor pool and parking garage, catering to tourists traveling on the interstate. Today, the former motel is known as the Manor Wing. The Reed House's significance as part of the historical and architectural fabric of Chattanooga was then cemented in 1976 when it was added to the National Register of Historic Places. After flying under the flag of Best Western, Radisson, and then Starwood Hotels, which runs Sheraton, the Reed House was sold in 2016 to Avocet Hospitality Group, founded by Charleston attorney, developer, and hotel manager John Weitz from South Carolina, specializing in restoring historic properties. They also run the Tides Hotel in Charleston, South Carolina, and a boutique art hotel in Charleston, known as the Venue. In 2004, Starwood Sheraton conducted a $12 million floor-to-ceiling renovation, opening Porter Steakhouse inside the hotel. A $27 million renovation project, worth $34 million today, commenced, including a complete overhaul and modernization of all guest rooms. The hotel's main entrance was also relocated from Broad Street back to the front of the hotel where it originally was, on what is now Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. 9th Street was renamed around 1981. The hotel was returned to its former glory, providing guests with a nostalgic yet tastefully elegant step back in time to the jazz era of the Roaring '20s. The iron bars on the windows of room 311 were reinstalled to give guests an authentic experience of what Al Capone's stay was like. But things didn't always go as smoothly as contractors hoped in renovating room 311. For a start, they couldn't even open the door, which was the only one in the hotel that wouldn't budge. Even attempts to remove the handle were futile, resulting in workers having to cut a hole through the door with a saw. 311 was also the only room where pipes burst during renovations in the middle of the night when all was quiet. One tiler reported online that while working in the room, there was an uneasy feeling and the fire alarm kept going off, only ceasing when the contractors finished their work. In 2018, the Reed House was officially relaunched to great fanfare. 241 guest rooms now had modern bathrooms, new furnishings, and of course, the latest TVs and Wi-Fi access. But one room is styled differently from all the rest, remaining truly faithful to yesteryear, with no modern electronics like a hairdryer, coffee maker, mini refrigerator, or TV. And it's entirely intentional. The scuffed gray door to room 311 can only be accessed with a physical key as opposed to a typical access card. The room was restored as authentically as possible, looking much the same as it would have during Annalisa Netherly's stay back in 1927. There's distressed hardwood floors, ornately carved Victorian-era furniture, including a velvet sofa, a marble-topped coffee table, antique rotary phone, a vintage clawfoot tub, pull-chain toilet, and an AM radio for display purposes. The goal was to make Annalisa's spirit feel at home as opposed to future guests. The first people to stay in room 311 following the revamp had a somewhat eventful visit. The hotel chose these guests by emailing all past guests, asking if they would like to stay in the room. According to the Hamilton County Herald, the couple were healthy skeptics and even set up a video camera. Apparently, shadows moving at night were detected. The woman felt something grab her wrist in the bedroom, later developing a large fresh bruise. Later that night, trying to make sense of the unexplained noises in the room, the woman felt the bed move. Shaking her husband awake, the woman felt something brush the back of her neck. The next morning, as the couple prepared to leave, the man closed the door on the living room cabinet, which he noticed was open. When he looked again a few minutes later, the cabinet drawer above was fully open too. But it's not just guests who have experienced odd things in room 311. Staff have seen the pull chain on the toilet swing back and forth with no breeze, and the door on the living room cabinet slowly open. Other spirits in the hotel continued to show up in photographs following the hotel's relaunch. According to the Chattanooga Times Free Press, in one picture of a woman taken inside the new lobby, the face of John T. Reed is said to be seen on the wall behind her. On a different occasion, an employee took a selfie, and the hotel's office is now in the basement. Only afterward did she realize that a detailed yet disembodied hand was resting on her left shoulder in the picture. The Reed House celebrated its 150th anniversary last year in 2022. There's no doubt that as the longest continuously operating hotel in the Southeast, it has remained a prominent stalwart of downtown Chattanooga, its rich social and cultural significance spanning the generations. The hotel doesn't shy away from its spine-tingling paranormal history, but instead embraces it as a living, breathing part of its identity. If you're interested in reading more about the story of Annalisa Netherly and paranormal phenomena at the Reed House, you might like the books Myths and Mysteries of Tennessee by Susan Sawyer, Haunted Tennessee Ghosts and Strange Phenomena of the Volunteer State by Alan Brown, and Ghosts of the Southern Tennessee Valley by Georgina Kotarski. The Reed House will actually be booking room 311 in October. Reservations will be based on a lottery. The hotel will have a dedicated landing page featuring a form for interested guests to enter. The webpage will be available to sign up for until September 13th. On September 14th, management will conduct random drawings to select the 6 winners. Go to thereedhousehotel.com/311-package. It can be found under the Offers tab. Included in the package are overnight accommodations in room 311, complimentary valet parking, in-room decanter of bathtub gin, 2 Annalisa cocktails at the bar and billiards room, Martini and Pearls pre-dinner amenity, $150 dining credit at Bridgman's Chop House, and a $25 Starbucks gift card for breakfast. I will be staying in room 311 next weekend. Follow me on Instagram for photos of my stay. I'm very excited to be a part of living history, and even more excited for a visit from Annalisa. Southern Fried True Crime is hosted and produced by me, Erica Kelley. Today's episode was researched and written by Gemma Harris. Southern Fried's original music is by Rob Harrison of Gemma Radio, and the original graphic artist by Coley Horner. If you have any case suggestions, please go to my website, southernfriedtruecrime.com, and click on the Listener Suggestion tab, or email sftcresearch@gmail.com. This is the best way for me to get those little-known cases y'all always send me. Please remember that I do not accept suggestions on social media private messages, but please come join our Facebook group, Southern Fried True Crime Fans Discussion Group, where we swap recipes, worship Dolly Parton, and share memes. I much prefer spending my social media time in our lovely group. We do, of course, discuss true crime, not just Southern Fried, but all kinds, but it is still very much a Southern lifestyle group. Our group is a safe and fun corner of Facebook, and by God, we mean it when we say no shit asses allowed. It's not just a motto, it's how we run the group. If you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to subscribe and please tell a friend or rate and review on iTunes. Southern Fright is available on all large platforms like iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, and now YouTube. Until next time, thanks so much for listening. Y'all take care.